A lot of excitement today. We are joined by Alex Jones, of course, the host of InfoWars. We've got a lot to get into today. Amongst other things, I want to hear his story. Enough people focus on his history and how he's gotten to where he is now. And his career has spanned decades, and of course, notoriety for some of his views on topics and government overreach. And there's actually memes out there about Alex Jones is right when he was thought to have been conspiratorial. Lo and behold, turned out to be right, which is so many of the things that we learn about today. After I speak with Alex, AJ Rice, President and CEO of Publius PR. He is the editor-in-chief of the Publius National Post, 2 best-selling books. He's going to talk about it. He talks a lot about wokeness and its impact and simple things like the decline of Western civilization. So stay with us. I see you all out in the Rumble Rants. We're watching you and on Twitter and on Restream. Back with Alex Jones right after this.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous.
I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that?
I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
I want to teach you about pharmacogenomic testing. This is changing the way we approach healthcare. By analyzing a patient's genetic profile, pharmacogenomics helps physicians personalize drug treatments for more effective results. First, it enhances medication efficacy by predicting how a patient will respond to a specific drug, reducing the trial and error process, especially in mental health care. For example, it can guide the choice of various medications to minimize side effects and improve outcomes. In the long run, pharmacogenomic testing leads to cost savings. It shortens the time to find the right treatment and avoids expensive side effects. It also supports more personalized care, helping physicians make better decisions and ensuring that treatments are tailored to each individual's unique genetic makeup. Test simply requires you to swab your cheek, then you send in the sample to our lab. Discover the power of personalized medicine with pharmacogenomic testing. Tailor your treatments based on your unique genetic makeup. Reduce trial and error, avoid side effects, find the most effective medication for you. Take control of your health today. Go to drdrew.com/checkgenetics. That is drdrew.com/checkgenetics. Joint and muscle pains are exhausting and frustrating, but I've got a over-the-counter medication I want to introduce you to that provides great relief using the power of, check it out, chili peppers. Capsidin is made with a proprietary formula that contains no non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents, no opioids, no anesthetic or steroid, nothing, no chance for addiction, no side effects. No chance it's going to interact with other medication you might be taking. Capsidin contains capsaicin, which is the substance in chili peppers that burns your tongue. That gives you that burny feeling. And of course, I've recommended capsaicin creams to patients over the years, but other capsaicin creams burn your skin. That's what makes capsidin so unique. In clinical trials, capsidin has actually been demonstrated not to burn.
I've been using capsidin to relieve my pain in my hands and my wrist from carpal tunnel syndrome and arthritis. The results have been amazing. I use it every day during my show, and I highly recommend it.
Get the pain relief you need from various sources, even backache, sprains, bruises even. Order now at capsidin.com/Drew to get a 15% discount plus free shipping. That is CAPSADYN, capsidin.com/DREW. And before we going, a shout out to our friends in Florida. Our thoughts are all with you guys. And I know Florida is used to these things. You get multiple hurricanes every year, but I'm sure it is no fun every time you go through it. And a reminder, we'll talk about TWC and, of course, Paleo Valley, all things that can help you during disasters like this. I want to get right to my guest. He needs no introduction. The host of InfoWars is the one and only Alex Jones. Alex, welcome.
Thanks for having me. It was great to have you on my show.
It was great to be there. Listen, I wanted, if you don't mind, I want to start by talking about you, if you don't mind. I don't really see anybody interviewing you about your life, your career, your history. I'm sure they did at one time, but I don't see that very often anymore. And as a guy that spent 35 years on the radio myself, I'm intrigued by your radio career, how you got involved with that. Do you mind talking about these things?
I'm more than happy to.
So where'd you grow up? What kind of family did you grow up in? Who is Alex Jones? I'm trying to figure that part out. It's not that easy to figure out. So clue us in on that and then how you got involved in radio.
Sure. I mean, I've been incredibly demonized by the deep state, by the establishment, because I went to a lot of source documents about the permanent bureaucracy and some of the financial interests that would rather America and the world be a totalitarian, centralized technocracy in their own words. And so I've been on there 30 years. I started out on Access TV in 1994. About a year later, I got a local call from a station that was flipping from rock music to talk on FM. We're doing a Saturday show. It got good ratings. They gave me a weeknight show. I found out how to syndicate it through a small syndicator a few years later. So I've been syndicated on radio for 27 years. At times, the show got extremely big, and then some of the things I said on air, taken out of context in the media, I would get kicked off a lot of stations. That happened after 9/11. Some of the things I said there, I was on over 200 radio stations, some of them huge then, and I went down to about 40 radio stations with my comments about that. And then built the show back up over the years. Always wanted to find new ways to reach people. I was one of the first people that was on Google Video, and had some of the first document cam or webcams. At first, you're showing an image every 30 seconds or so. I could show news articles and I also made documentary films starting in the late 90s, 97 or so. I can actually show listeners what I was talking about.
Yeah, back to in 94, what motivated you to get into that search for the deep state? Because I think, to say you were ahead of the curve would be an understatement. I think even the concept wasn't something that was being tossed around at the time. What was going on with you that you had some insight into this?
My dad had, in high school, got recruited into UT Plan 2 because he had some of the top test scores in the country. And so he got out of it, before he ever, got into the actual programs after he graduated. But he got recruited into the kind of scientific dictatorship system. So he knew a lot about it. And so he was doing stuff for DARPA when he was in high school, working in some of those programs. And then my mother's brother, my uncle, I was real close to, he died 10 years ago. He had been a big helicopter ace and war hero in Vietnam and done clandestine stuff there. And he got recruited into pretty high-level management in Iran-Contra. And so I grew up around him here in Texas, telling me how things really worked. And I was a sports guy and everything else, but I did get into reading really early. I've always been a voracious reader. So I got out of comic books when I was about 8 or 9 and started reading military encyclopedias and history books. And so I really got into history and read Marcus Aurelius's book and read, Julius Caesar's writings, and then, got into Plato and got into Aristotle. And then I, read Nietzsche's, a couple of his books. I read Machiavelli by the time I was about 15. I read some of the Pulitzer Prize winning books like Shearer's Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. Thought that was fascinating. Then I read a lot of other, books about World War II. And so I guess because I had an interest in history, then I could see the parallels and also how I was grown up and just my family being, informed. And my dad's, dad was really informed. His mom was informed. My mother's dad was also, had been in World War II, a fighter pilot, and then he'd been an inventor. Growing up in Dallas, a successful inventor, growing up kind of in the German community in Dallas, that were a bunch of inventors. So I grew up around him and, talking about how the world really worked. So I was just blessed that I was around a lot of people that were geopolitically aware. And I remember my dad ranting about Zbigniew Brzezinski when I was like 5 years old at the dinner table and, their plans for world government. And so that's why I found that really interesting. And a lot was happening in 94, 95. And so I didn't even really try to be in the media. I wasn't thinking of that as a career. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I'm 50 now. I was, like 20 years old when I first got on air. I thought I'll go do Access Television. And then that was basically what happened there. So it was a 30-year overnight success story. And then when Trump won or was about to win, the Democrats even admitted this. They wanted to hurt Trump. So they said Alex Jones is Trump's brain, which really wasn't true. And literally thousands of news articles, hundreds of newscasts saying I was the ultimate devil, trying to demonize Trump by extension. And then when Trump won, They ran 2 years of headlines that I was doing things to families from a mass shooting that I never did, out of context, to demonize me and then demonize Trump. And then they sued me, and then they had default judgments and rigged court cases. And then later the FBI testified in the show trial in Connecticut that they actually created the whole thing, got me sued, did all that as an attempt to take me off air. They've now admitted that. A group affiliated with the Project Veritas, folks, they'd done work for Veritas, got footage earlier this year. It was pretty bombshell of a CIA guy that they were doing another investigation into human trafficking, and we're interviewing the CIA guy with hidden cameras, and he also admitted the whole plot to demonize me and take me off air and set the precedent with me to then ban everybody else. And so now in hindsight, we know how that was done with the Democratic Party, PR firms, and the whole setup. So I really don't even see it as being a victim because it was very interesting to have the deep state kind of put me in its jaws, and was quite a learning process. But because the deep state and the establishment is so discredited, just like all the indictments and convictions of Trump by these show trials has made him more popular, it's now had the opposite effect and made me more popular. And so it's a very, very crazy and bizarre place to be historically. And I kind of jumped ahead from my origin story to just what, the current story. Most of your viewers who may have heard of me, but maybe never actually heard me, I want them to know they can look up everything I just said, and they're actually admitting it. That's what's crazy. Hillary Clinton has come out twice the last month and said, get rid of the First Amendment. John Kerry has said the First Amendment stands the way, and that they want to, now Facebook banned advertising on Instagram and Facebook under Meta of the Reagan movie. That's like a sweet family movie. Absolutely just a very positive film, not even political. Left versus right. So now they even want to ban or restrict people seeing the Reagan movie. So that shows you where these totalitarians are going. Hillary just said last week, well, we're going to lose total control if we don't, get control and start censoring people. So I was the first test case, they now admit, to try to set the precedent, be able to censor everybody else. And when a lot of people didn't stand up for me being censored, then it set the precedent for everybody else. And then Trump got banned, and on Twitter and Facebook and everywhere else. And they even took down his videos on January 6th saying, be peaceful when you go to the Capitol. And then later when he said, don't go in, don't be violent, they even removed that so that it couldn't be shown that he was, not guilty of what they claimed. So that's what's scary about censorship, is they don't just silence what you're saying. They can then lie about you and build a straw man and misrepresent who you are. So they basically steal your identity. So it's been very refreshing to have Elon Musk bring me back on X, despite all the attacks and demonization and boycotts. And now X is the most popular social media platform in the world, and it's dominating. And so the worm's turning, and humanity has a real hunger and quest for the right of not just to say what you want, but the right to hear what somebody else is saying. And so I'm just very blessed to be part of this major global discourse and have a lot of hope and faith for humanity.
Yeah, I've become a free speech absolutist, and thus you are here with me. And I noticed that the DOJ put something out today about what they want to do with Google and YouTube, which is essentially dismantle the whole thing, which I think will create an interesting reaction from a very powerful company. I can't imagine them doing that. But my question to you is, you mentioned Musk. What do you think about what Musk said about the people on one side of the aisle really needing to win so that the Epstein list is not released? Do you agree with that?
Yes, I actually first broke the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing about 18 years ago from my sources in Hollywood and in New York. And I've said the name Jeffrey Epstein even before some of the first cases came up, where he just literally was on house arrest, basically, would just check himself in a few hours a day there in Florida to the jail. And I was told that basically they were using classic honeypots, but it's not enough to have a guy cheating on his wife like 60 years ago, or then the new thing was, oh, the person's gay. And so in a lot of these elite circles, like Bohemian Grove and things, powerful people go there literally to be inducted into kind of the rite of passage so that they are in the club. Even Nixon talked about it. He didn't do it, but he said people basically go there, and the tapes are out there of Nixon, to be in that club. Then they think they can trust you. Well, it's not enough to be closeted gay now. That's not enough dirt on you. They want you to have sex with underage teenage girls and boys. And they've been very, very good at just keeping it to a few 16 and 17-year-olds. But what we know about Epstein and now P. Diddy and, all of this, and of course, P. Diddy's connected to a lot of Epstein people. And then Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell, she's convicted of this child trafficking, of course, and sex slavery and the rest of it. Her father was an MI6/Mossad operative, that's admitted. He's buried with full national honors in the Mount of Olives outside Jerusalem. And he was running that famously, reportedly in the UK, and how they've got control of the UK government with pedophilia. And so Epstein is the most well-known person running one of these honeypot operations, but there's a lot of other organizations and groups that are doing it. In fact, my uncle on his deathbed 10 years ago told me in East Texas at the hospital, he's dying of pneumonia, and they got a really bad virus. He was a healthy guy, but it just looked like Popeye. He was in great shape, but it just killed him. And right before they put him on the ventilator, he'd already told me, some of the stuff. He told my mom a lot more because she was there longer. But just that when, he was doing all this stuff for Army Special Operations and the CIA in Central America and South America, building airfields and running communications, he was in charge of that they were shipping orphans out on the planes from Guatemala, little kids. And he didn't know what they were doing, but they wouldn't get specific. And he thought it was child trafficking. And so he quit and got out of it then. And that's when he, and that was in the late 80s. And he did say that Reagan wasn't even aware of it because he was involved in communications and knew who was running it out of the White House. It was George Herbert Walker Bush, he told me. But that was that point for him. So this has been going on for a long time. Remember, like 15 years ago, Russia banned orphans coming to the U.S. and Putin said they're some are in sex slavery. And so that sounds, to those of us that aren't into that, unbelievable. But we see the sexualization of children. The whole transgender thing is about sexualization of children and secret agreements in public schools where they don't tell the parents that they're convinced the kid to begin transitioning or believe they're transitioning, and they put secret files together and they have NGOs that come in. So this whole attack on our children and their innocence that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is talking about is really massive and central. And so when Musk talks about that, he told, as you know, Tucker, he said, no, I know most of the people in the deep state, and I'm telling you, because we already know some of their names from the flights, like Bill Gates, 30-something times, that this is the deep state. And then you get into who, basically was one of the biggest attendees there at Little St. John's Island, and of course the Zorro Ranch and other groups, is the widow of Steve Jobs and best friends, with Ghislaine Maxwell. So when you look at this power structure, it's just insane. And Bill Gates, we know, is into giving money to the top scientists and others to control scientific thought. So, and he spends billions, every few years on media. So when you see a big piece on him in the newspaper or online in the London Guardian or ABC News, a lot of times at the end they'll say, underwritten by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Now she's now left him and gotten out of the foundation, she said, mainly because of the Jeffrey Epstein thing. So we're waiting the next big shoe to drop, but clearly they're using blackmail on scientists of the sexual nature, and that's why I believe the evidence shows that's why Gates is so connected to that. And again, it's not like they even trick most of these people. Just like in the mafia, you've got to kill a few people in the Italian mafia to make your bones in La Cosa Nostra or the family. And then the Mexican mafia and other mafias are, Hell's Angels. You've got to commit some murders before you're really a made member, because they can control you. They know that you'll do what you're told, and they can destroy you anytime they want. Well, the rite of passage or the induction ceremony into this globalist cabal is generally pedophilia.
I want to push back on the Bohemian Grove thing for a second, if you don't mind, because I've been practicing medicine here in Southern California for like 40, coming down on 40 years. Is it 40 years? Jesus. And maybe 20 years ago, I had a lot of 80 and 90-year-old patients who were former part of the Reagan inner circle when he was governor of California. And they all used to go to Bohemian Grove. It was a very right-leaning thing where they would go and hear lectures and stuff and just sort of hang out and smoke cigars. I don't know if it's been captured. I don't have any recent information about it, but I just want you to file that in your thinking that I actually had direct contact with a number of these guys, and they were not as you described them now. So it may be something different now. I don't know. But I want to circle.
That's fascinating. So I can come back to it if you want to say something else now, but I would love to agree with you right now. I want to be clear. Okay. I'm the first person to ever successfully sneak into Bohemian Grove and get the cremation care ritual on tape. I saw Danny Glover when I was in there. I saw probably my favorite actor, one of my favorite actors, Clint Eastwood, when I was in there. There's 1,000 members, 1,000 guests. 95% of it is just getting, having fun, listening to music and drinking in this beautiful old redwood grove there in Sonoma County on the Russian River. Richard Nixon, just type it in, Richard Nixon on Bohemian Grove. His famous tapes are on that. And he said it's the most GD, faggy thing you've ever seen. And then Helmut Schmidt wrote a book about it and talked about it. And so what I'm saying is there is a group within that. And you can look up Bohemian Grove homosexuality, and it's been news articles written about. If you want to get in the club there, a bunch of that is going on. And of course, Mark Twain found it wasn't like that in the 1870s. And then William Howard Taft, who was Skull and Bones member and a president, the railroad got there, the Republicans took it over. It was more of a Skull and Bones spinoff for adults, kind of ultra Masonic. But I was specifically talking about used to it's you're cheating on your wife, we got dirt. And then it's okay, you did a, kind of a gay ritual like they do at Skull and Bones. That's come out. And they do it in like a vat of horse manure. I mean, that's even in The Good Shepherd that was directed and produced by Robert De Niro with Matt Damon. And by the way, and they've said that's very accurate. And of course, Anthony Sutton was the head Senate archivist. He got the documents from Charlotte Iserby, whose dad was a member of it. So that's why we know all that. But absolutely, most people going to Bohemian Grove are, not in homosexual cults. Sorry, go ahead.
And I want to circle back. And you said you used a phrase about what you were exposed to growing up, how the world works, and then you also talked about your love of history. Given those two experiences, you educated yourself about world events and the cycles of history, and you said something like this always happens or whatever. Well, I don't know what you meant quite by that, and how the world works. Help me understand what your theory is about our present moment within the grand historical sweep. Is this, things history does, maybe it doesn't exactly repeat itself, but it sort of echoes, there. And to me, it feels like this kind of thing that's happening now happens every 80 or so years. It's different always. I noticed something yesterday when I was thinking about it, is that this kind of thing never happened before the printing press. And so technology clearly plays a role in how these things are executed and sort of brought to bear on a mass scale. And now we've never had such an efficient mass technology. How do you understand what's happening in the present moment?
Well, that's a great question. There's different ways to look at this, but there's, of course, the book that I read years ago, The Fourth Turning, that predicted what we're seeing now. And it's not just a regular 87-year cycle that we know is there. That's been accelerated by the Gutenberg press 500 years ago. It is a mega cycle, kind of a precursor, if you believe we'll ever actually hit it, to the singularity, whether we ever reach the actual singularity that Ray Kurzweil talks about in 2047, as he predicts, which a lot of the top technocrats and futurists believe, is the case. This post-human world, the future is not human. You all know Harari, all of that. They believe we're about to transcend, but that most of us won't basically transcend in that. So they know a major change is coming, and the establishment wants to stay in power. And power groups, whether it's in ancient China or Europe or Mesoamerica, anywhere, always you see a civilization rise, and then it gets powerful, and then it becomes decadent, and then it declines and collapses. And that can happen in different ways. Of course, there's the saying that hard times make strong men make good times make weak men make bad times. And so if you read a lot of what the top thinkers think in the establishment, they talk about the end of history. And they want to have kind of a breakaway civilization of technocracy and elites that keep most of that secret from the public on their government and corporate reservations, kind of city-states within city-states. and then the nation state dissolves away into a kind of a global order that's controlled by three major power blocks and then separate sub-blocks in that. And they kind of want the public distracted with video games.
Does history tell you that's a likely scenario? And does your understanding of the way the world works indicate to you that that's how it's going? It could also be going that way and not work out. You know what I mean? History could tell you, no, this won't happen. Well, how does history inform those perceptions you have?
Well, I totally agree with you. The way you said it, I've never heard that. History repeats somewhat. It's been said history rhymes, but I agree. History echoes.
Yeah.
And so let's be clear. I'm stating what the general thought in the different thought thinkers from different angles is. And of course, you're informed. You already know that and probably more than I do. But I totally agree with what you were just kind of hinting at. And the globalists now, their main mouthpieces, the Atlantic, the Financial Times of London. I mean, those are really kind of the establishment mouthpieces, the Club of Rome, the CFR, the Trilateral Commission. They admit they're losing control, and their plan that they thought for this technocracy and this things to come, that kind of H.G. Wells is one of the progenitors of this neo-eugenics, neoliberal movement. He didn't just write science fiction. He wrote a lot of nonfiction, like the New World Order and things to come. They made an early movie out of it for the day. It was incredibly professional. And so now their plan is actually not working. They also said corporate world government would be administered to end war and to redistribute wealth, not through communism, but through kind of a crony capitalist system. But of course, we've seen a bigger vertical integration of wealth than we've ever seen in history. And these greedy groups basically pay no taxes. And so they have all this altruistic talk, but they even admit it's fallen apart because they all just ran off with the money. And now they think things are falling apart so bad that it's even mainstream news. I broke this decades ago, but these top billionaires are all building huge bunkers in the middle of nowhere. Zuckerberg's got his in Kauai. And they are all, just waiting to run to the hills, and all have these huge escape yachts that aren't just for entertaining. And I knew from sources, I talked about this almost 18 years ago. I was with a big producer in Hollywood, and he went around and showed me the studios of James Cameron making a movie with him. And he said, "Oh, Cameron probably won't make many more movies," which he really hasn't, because he thinks the end of the world's coming. He's gone to New Zealand, and he was going to roll out all the hologram movie theaters and all this, but he just doesn't think it's going to matter. And then they told me later, I saw pieces in the news that, oh yeah, Cameron, has this fleet of ships, he says, looking for sunken ships, but really that's the tax write-off. So when everything collapses, he can escape to the ocean. Well, then now you see the headlines. Elites, have the...
Right, I hear what you're saying, and so that's my question. I'm asking you actually to kind of predict the future, what your feeling about the future is, because I'm hearing you say that they think it's going to be a catastrophe, or they think they're going to be able to centralize and end war and distribute wealth, and that kind of thing. So my question to you is one of those outcomes likely in your opinion, or are they just going to fail? It's just going to fail, and people are going to get back to taking care of their own families and their own communities and become hyper-localized, which is really the bromide for all this. What's your prediction?
Well, I don't think that the establishment, which act like they're all unified, and they'll agree on certain policies and power grabs, but they're actually fighting with each other, that they call themselves the Anglo-American establishment. And notice when Putin talks about the West, he calls it that. And that's an old term, but that's what they call themselves, kind of the British Empire merged with America in the West, and then kind of the EU's in the middle. Mm-hmm. And then China's the other big power block, and then Russia junior to that. And you've got the Arab states and, all the things that are happening. But absolutely, that really is the question. I believe we control our destiny. I'm seeing major signs everywhere of not just the globalist plan for world government failing, and then there being giant wars due to, the issues that are there, and not just problems they've caused. We've got plenty of problems the globalists didn't cause and the technocrats didn't cause, versus people like Elon Musk coming in admitting, at the World Government Summit last year, put on with the WEF, he said, we want firewalls. We want, bulkheads and ships. We don't want a one world government with centralized stuff. That always creates a nightmare. We want decentralization and then good ideas. Yeah. Globally, but also locally, that people then adopt.
Is that going to win?
Working.
Is that going to happen? What's your prediction? I want you to put a bet down. I want to bet.
I would give us about a 60% chance that we're able to stabilize the planet and be honest and release all these advanced technologies and things that the globalists see as disruptive, and really not try to dumb people down and not try to have a destabilized population that's easy to control. I believe we can turn the ship around so there's going to be some major crises, some serious wars.
Okay.
But I'd say about a 60% chance we don't kill each other in a bioweapon war or a nuclear war. And there's not going to be some utopia that I'm predicting like, the left or the globalists do. That's all a lie. But definitely a better course and way more positive, amazing times. If people just get informed about issues and demand their rights and also work hard and get excited about innovation and excited about the future,
Yes.
I see a golden age, quite frankly.
Well, it's funny. I've heard that from various sources, and theoretically, your fourth turning, the book you described, that's kind of what they suggest, is that the generation that comes into the fourth turning is a heroic generation and will cause, I don't see the road out myself, but I do know that the enemy is over centralization, and that, taking care of your own family, your own neighborhood, your own community has always been the answer. That's how humans have evolved.
And notice everything the WEF does is just a mouthpiece of the biggest Fortune 100. Is you can't have your own organic farm. It's bad. Eating meat's bad. Having a car is bad. You going anywhere is bad. You're bad. Let us take your life under our control. Your life force, your instincts bad. Don't have children. They just want us to give up and turn history over to them and just let them be captains of the ship, to the point we don't even realize that we're on a ship or there are captains. They just want us out of the way. Definitely that power structure is imploding and failing. So yes, we've got a lot of work to do, and we're going to need the heroic generation led by people like Elon Musk and others if we are not going to destroy ourselves. So I have 4 children. I don't want to believe we're going to destroy ourselves. It's always darkest before the dawn. And so I'm an eternal optimist. And again, when Trump got elected, because most people aren't public figures, and that's great. I'm not, but most people aren't Dr. Drew or Alex Jones or something like that that's well known. I would get 95% love over the years, but wasn't super famous. People knew who I was, but I would shake hands at the grocery store, when I'd walk the dog, when I'd go to church, anywhere. I ran into a lot of people that liked the show or see my work. When Trump got in, it went from, 99% love, because people don't like you, aren't going to say anything usually, to, 90% love, 10% being yelled at on the street, yelled at in restaurants, yelled at in grocery stores, yelled at the mall, yelled at the doctor's office. And then when they started indicting Trump and people saw how bad Biden was, I get yelled at every 6 months now in public or something. And even people that shake their heads at me and go, actually, you're right. I was wrong about you. And it's not about me. It's just that I'm seen as a bellwether that the system said is the most evil person since Satan and since Adolf Hitler. And the system's so discredited that their attack on me is the endorsement I could never do. And so that to me is emblematic of how
Alex,
big the...
Yeah. You just made me think. I'm so committed to free speech. If you were Satan, I would still talk to you. I'm still, if that's the case,
I would love to.
I'm even more, right?
I would love to interview
I'll talk to Satan, sure. Right, me too. But two things, and then Caleb, you're going to come in here because my technical director is a big Alex Jones fan, and he had a couple questions. I want to give him a chance. But two comments of what you just said before we do. It was either Peter Thiel or Mark Andreessen said, "Be careful with the darkest before the dawn," because another way to look at it is it's darkest before it's pitch black. And so be careful. It can get a lot worse before it gets better.
Oh no, I agree. I don't think we've hit bottom yet. I don't think we've hit bottom yet. I agree. Go ahead.
Okay, fair enough. I'll quote you on that. And as far as captains, these centralizing captains, how much of a student of history do you have to be to understand how bad that turns out? Every time, you name it, it ends badly. You name it, any historical sweep, and when there's a centralization of anything, it ends badly. So I just want to point that out again. But Caleb, you have some questions for Alex, I assume?
Yeah, hi, Alex. I grew up in Austin, Texas, actually, so I remember listening to you on my dad's radio decades and decades ago, and you probably remember this as well. Back then, all of us were just like the crazy anti-vaxxer, homeschooler, farm prepper people, like the real outcasts of society. But now you fast forward to the day.
That was Caleb. He's describing himself.
That was back then. But I mean, a lot of us, like, you show up at these events and it's like kind of the same type of people. But that was 20, 30 years ago, the outcast. But now you fast forward to today, and all of a sudden, like Alex Jones, that's a household name. Everybody knows who Alex Jones is. And now you have Dr. Drew talking about this rational revolution stuff. So it's not my mother's fringe group anymore. But then with that, what's happening now is
Caleb, hold on. You bring up something interesting, which I'll let you finish your question, but I hope Alex can also point out, which is I worry about people becoming paranoid or conspiratorial and detaching from reality. I really worry about that. I also worry about the delusionality and aggression on the left. Because I'm so moderate, I sit in the middle and see the excesses on both sides. But finish we'll let him contextualize your question with that. Go ahead, finish.
So, actually, what I'm talking about is something that goes even further than that. It's a step beyond deeper into this anxiety spiral, where it's the movement that's inside of our movement that's now saying, wait a second, something is so suspicious. Why are the powers that be that have all the power in the world allowing people like Alex Jones or Dr. Drew to speak freely about globalism and the NSA and Big Pharma unless they're controlled opposition? That's the new term. So how do you respond to like the allies that should be your allies who suddenly think that you're the enemy just because people are finally listening to you after all these years?
It's a great question, because that is all about the paranoia I was talking about. So let's let Alex answer that.
Absolutely. And by the way, I told you guys I had to go in 45 minutes because I have to sign a document because my bankruptcy's ending in the next few days. But I've got time. I can do another 20 minutes or whatever you want. Or if you want to kick me out of here in 5, I can stay. But this is a really important question. I'm glad you asked it, the best I've heard. And I could literally talk for 10 hours about this, but let me try to boil this down for people. I know 100% that I'm a real person, organic, self-trained. I really care about people. I care about my children. If you care about your children, you care about the world they're going to grow up in. You don't have the sociopathic idea that you get ahead by hurting people. It's the opposite. So that said, let me answer the question this way. Elon Musk's brother got really sick from the COVID shot. Elon Musk's son, he sent him to an elite school, as his girlfriend said, and then they basically took him away from him. And in his views, he's dead. You know, I mean, they're chemically castrating him. So they messed with him, even though he was one of the richest people in the world. Elon Musk, you judge a tree by its fruits, as Christ said, is devastating the current power structure. And you can say he sees them going down and he wants to position himself in the future. Okay, fine. The point is that all the top talk show hosts, whether it's Tucker Carlson or Joe Rogan or Dr. Drew or you name it. I mean, I could name hundreds of really big people. All the top shows are anti-globalist, pro-human, decentralization, because we're sane and don't want to destroy the world and don't want to centralize tyranny and don't want a universal credit score and don't want our medical freedom taken away. And so there's a strong life force to be free and be successful. So that's the pull. But you're right. People get red-pilled, and then they go out there, and there's a lot of stuff. Just because there's extreme lying by Kamala Harris denying she's against fracking or wants to take your guns or, just next-level lying, then there's other extreme stuff where people think the world's flat and that birds aren't real and all of that crazy crap because they just don't even know what to do. Right. They weren't informed enough in their life or enough experience to be able to gauge what's happening. So they have their own psychosis, in my view. And so that's, but at the end of the day, that can get unhealthy, but it's less unhealthy than believing everything you're told. And I think that's a process. So you have red pill, you have black pill that thinks everything's doomed. And then so you've got people that are awake and trying to learn that are red pill. You've got black pill that think everything's screwed, everybody's bad but them. And then you've got the white pill that think everything's, fine either with the establishment or you think it's all going to turn out okay. I'm not red pill, black pill, or white pill. I invented a term called just recently green pill. And by that, I know we go through processes, birth, growth, development, peaking, declining, dying in civilizations, in people, in life, in the universe, in stars, in galaxies, in everything. And so it's no more about knowing the processes. Right. It's not like I know how the world works. I can see the processes in history and laws and tendencies and how the ripples in the pond from the pebble and the Hegelian dialect and how these systems work and how the establishment thinks, trying to get full control. They're not omnipresent. All the propaganda and censorship would not be necessary. It's been said a million times if we didn't have power. So people need to have faith in humanity. We go through these cycles. There's not just evil, not just corruption, not just ignorance, not just selfishness. And most of it's not organized evil. It's lazy people just doing whatever's easy and going with the flow and stagnation. And so to people out there, it makes them feel more superior to claim I'm loyal opposition to God knows what, fine. But I have the establishment literally trying to destroy me, the Justice Department in the news, calling for me to be shut down. And so I am a maverick, and I am a person that believes in humanity. And so if people, and it doesn't mean I'm perfect. I made plenty of mistakes, but the difference is I know that I know nothing. You know, these people that think they know everything know absolutely nothing.
Right. And I mean, that's the biggest sign for me is like you just said a minute ago, you have to leave our show soon to go sign some bankruptcy documents. Like if you were a CIA asset, that would have gone away a long time ago. And I know Drew isn't controlled opposition because I'd be getting those sweet little CIA commission checks. Like I'd have a lot more stuff. I'd get commissions on that. So I know internally. I don't know how to prove it, but I know absolutely certain that he's not a CIA asset.
One of the things about delusions is they can't be reasoned with. So I'd be careful.
That's why it drives me crazy is because it seems like it's such a defeatist attitude. Because like, if for me, as someone who grew up as an outcast because of my family was like this, I understand that I understand the suspicions because for so long we were exclusively outsiders. And it reminds me of, there was a guy, I don't know if you're familiar with Hal Turner from back in 2008, where he was an FBI informant. Like this has happened before with people who are radio hosts, that they get turned by the CIA or the FBI and they infiltrate the movements. I'm sure it's happening right now with some people. And
it's very easy to spot those people, like that Michigan militia that the FBI created, and to try to get to kidnap Whitmer. I mean, Hal Turner was stirring stuff up and then trying to get crazies to organize things so the FBI would have a setup. Even like the New York Times back when it was half decent, 20 years ago, ran the headline, "The majority of terror plots are hatched and run by the FBI." I think that's the exact headline. I think they said like 97% of them. So this, it's like the latest guy that was trying to kill Trump for Iran, thought he was working for Iran. He was approached by the FBI. When somebody's on the air 35 years like Dr. Drew and goes against the system, even though he has a top show, and gets censored or fired for it, that's the real person. They're trying to put Elon Musk in jail. All these governments are coming after him. They've tried to kill Trump twice. I mean, this is real. And so it doesn't mean Trump's perfect or I'm perfect, but Trump's a hospitality guy, golf courses, hotels. He wants prosperity. I mean, he went to Kim Jong-un and said, or Kim Jong-il's son, and said, showed him a video of computer graphics of hotels and golf courses, and Kim Jong-un reportedly cried, but China, basically controls North Korea, so he couldn't do it. He said, "Why have slaves? Why don't you have golf courses? Why don't you be a rock star?" And that's what Trump wants is like Santa Claus, to have fun and believe in humanity. And so you can judge him by what he does. You can judge me. I'm the same type of guy. I just want, open, free, great society, masculinity, femininity. If you want to be whatever, something, you want to say you're a dog, that's fine. Just don't try to teach my kid at school to crap in a cat box. We don't want to be part of the mental illness, but you can go be mentally ill if you want. So I come from Access Television.
Okay, hold on.
I'm real.
So that's my question. That's what that leads to is, so as someone who's been in this and you've seen a lot of actual controlled opposition go in and out of this whole movement, what are some signs of actual controlled opposition agents that are infiltrating? Because I can pick like 2 or 3 out right now that are pretty
Caleb,
clear.
I'm gonna kick you off. I got to finish with Alex after that, so I'll let him answer your question because I know it's bothering you. So
but I'd be happy to have your producer on. We should have this discussion on my show and do 2 hours commercial free or simulcast. This is great.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Because I need to do more of this.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Caleb, simulcast. There you go. We'll figure that out.
Absolutely, I would absolutely do it.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I've never done is infight. I've never tried to be territorial or like the gatekeeper, like the left, like I'm a fact checker and I say what's real and what's not. Yeah. Most of these government plants and people reveal themselves, or they're not government plants, but they get in trouble. Then they flip to the other side. Look, I've had the Justice Department in the mediations, which I couldn't talk about until they said it openly outside of mediation. Then my lawyer said, no, go ahead and talk about it. They have federal prosecutors and people running these fake lawsuits against me, and they literally say they're in federal court in places with a judge in federal mediation and state mediation. Look, we'll drop all this. We want you to come out against the Second Amendment. And I say, okay, let me guess, there's more. They go, well, actually there is. Are you open? And I said, no, of course there's more. I wouldn't come out against the Second Amendment to be left alone. But I said, plus I know once I feed the pirate, once I feed the crocodile, it's always going to come back for more, like a social credit score. They're always going to raise the bar. And so I said, no, I know how this works. So I've literally had them say, we will drop all this before they have their show trials and after, if you bend the knee. And they just can't believe. So, I mean, you talk about the deep state. I am saying these Democrat Party law firms run by Senator Blumenthal, the same ones that sue Trump and Giuliani and all of them, they spent $70 million. That's in court filings the last 7 years suing me and attacking me and lying about me, I've spent $15 million fighting them, okay? And literally, I break bombshells that are confirmed. I've said this on air. Notice they don't say it's not true. They don't respond back. They literally politically did all this. On the courthouse steps, they say, we want him off the air. They refuse a $70 million settlement with me. Over 10 years, I have to bust my ass to pay them that, more than I ever made personally before. They lie and say I have $4 million in the bank. All of it was BS. And they said it's not about money, no settlement. So they can now, with a non-dischargeable judgment of $1.5 billion, chase me around and harass me for the rest of my life. Well, good. I love it. If that's the cost of telling the truth, I don't care. It's fun to be the rebel. It's fun to be the maverick. And I just love it. I love it. I love the fact that they hate me so much. Both my grandfathers were in World War II. One was a fighter pilot. The other was a B-17 pilot. Flying cross, whole 9 yards. And you have this, they didn't have really good radar then. They had it on the ground, but not in the planes. And they didn't have good topography maps. But they knew to go to the factories and military bases because the Germans put up their flak guns and they saw the flak, the explosions of shrapnel, and they flew into it. But just like my grandfather, Jerry Jones, flew into the flak over Italy and Germany, I'm flying into the flak and I love it. And their attacks are my radar. I go to where I'm being punched in the face and attack the hardest. That is my heat-seeking missile, and I love it. I love it. I love it.
Alex, I appreciate you being here. You mentioned GWF Hagel a few minutes ago, and I will just finish with a interpretation. He spoke in a lot of, his language was sort of impenetrable, but one of the things he said about history is he said this: the owl of Minerva spreads its wings only with the setting of dusk. The owl of Minerva spreads its wings only with the setting of dusk, which means that the wisdom of history reveals itself only once it's past. So we will see where this all goes, you and we will have more conversations, I hope. And I appreciate you being here, and good luck with your paperwork today. It sounds unpleasant, but I get that you're over the target. So appreciate you being here.
Appreciate you. And people can find the Forbidden Show at Real Alex Jones on X. Please follow me there. And Infowars.com until the 13th. Where it goes up on the chopping block, and the Patriots are trying to buy it, but Soros, through Media Matters, is probably going to buy it, shut it down as some celebration, and they're going to try to, like a Roman standard they've captured, mounted on the wall. It's only going to make us bigger because we know we're winning. We only lose if they convince us that we've lost. We're winning. Humanity's turning the tide. Dr. Drew and crew, look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks, Alex. See you soon. And then, Caleb, we will do a simulcast with your questions as leading.
The Caleb and Alex Jones
Absolutely.
show here on the Dr. Drew Network.
I did not know that stuff bothered you so much, but I see how much it bothers you. So we have to do that for you.
I think you know some of my family history, but it's like I grew up in all of this.
I see that's for you. That's over the target.
Well,
that really bothers you.
I grew up in all of it. Then I moved to California, so I had like 18 years living deep in this, then about 12 years living deep in lefty liberal California, and then I've swung right back to the middle, but I still have like this history of understanding the thought process of what made, like, everything started with Waco for a lot of people. If anyone is curious about where this movement started, it started with Waco, with my parents and my grandparents, and anyone who's listening, your parents and grandparents. It was what the government did at Waco.
And look at it. For a lot of people, it was the weapons of mass destruction. It was 9/11. There's a lot of things that have happened that got people kind of concerned. But that simulcast idea with you asking questions sounds fascinating to me. And I did want to get in, he has talked about his mental health stuff over the years, and I wanted to get in deeper about that if he's open for it. So maybe in our simulcast, maybe we'll do that. But that was interesting. I appreciate you all. I'm watching you guys over the Rumble Rants. You're very supportive and very interested in all this.
There's like 20,000 people on Twitter. Hi, Twitter.
I would ask you to stick around because my next guest is going to be equally as interesting. It is AJ Rice. He has a book, the White Privilege album, and The Woking Dead. He talks a lot about wokeism and simple things like the decline of Western civilization. So we will talk about all that after this quick break. Be right back. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins, and a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue, and we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15. Many of us have not gotten over COVID. I'm not talking about the virus itself, but the response. We were flabbergasted about what the government could do to us. There is no telling what they might pull next time, and it's looking more like there will be a next time. So we all have to be what I call rationally ready. That's where the wellness company comes in. TWC is about access to physicians via telehealth, access to potentially life-saving medication. Years ago, having access to medication and telehealth might have seemed crazy, but now it seems crazy not to. Now, with claims that gain-of-function research have been done on the bird flu, I urge everyone to take control of their healthcare with the help of the wellness company. Go to drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off all their products, including the 4 medical kits, each of which has a different purpose. And we've added Tamiflu to one of them in case the bird flu does become a problem for humans. Be rationally ready. drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off.
Dr. Drew said the best way to quit drinking is by going cold turkey, and he's a doctor, so why would you question doctors?
Dr. Drew called me unfixable.
I've had the medical emergency kit on hand, but we do have telehealth through TWC if you need it while you're moving around trying to avoid that storm. And of course, the Paleo Valley sticks would be a wonderful adjunct for you guys to throw in your car to have available. We all should have it. I mean, and plus, what's that, Susan? And the bone broth. And of course, the bone broth. I want to talk about Juvent Micro Impact Platform. It's a game changer. We've all heard of impact loading. Our bones grow and stay stronger when they're exposed to certain levels of stress, walking, running. We literally have a magnetic field around our bones, believe it or not. Well, Juvent gives you the same benefit, but in a way that's gentle and safe for your joints, especially if you're dealing with issues like osteoporosis, arthritis, or even recovering from an injury. Juvent uses low magnitude, high frequency micro impact technology. Now, that might sound a bit too technical, so here's what it means. When you stand on this platform, it safely delivers tiny impacts to your body that it needs for optimum bone health. But remember, our bones don't just hold us up. They play a critical role in our body's immune response and produce stem cells, and they're key to tissue repair and regeneration. Juvent helps to stimulate that process naturally so your body can heal itself without invasive treatments, and it feels good. Unlike other vibration plates out there, you can actually, which some of them are dangerous actually, but Juvent uses only a fraction of the energy while still delivering the powerful health benefits. So if you're serious about optimizing your health and wellness, especially if you want to strengthen your bones and improve mobility, check out Juvent, that's Juvent, Micro Impact Platform. That is at drdrew.com/Juvent. Again, drdrew.com/JUVENT. And be sure to use that code Drew for $500 off your Juvent today. So as I said, we're going to switch gears and speak with AJ Rice, President and CEO of Publius PR, Editor-in-Chief of the Publius National Post. The books are The Woking Dead and The White Privilege album. You can get them now. He's a publicist that has represented notable figures, many of them political figures. You can follow him on X at Publius PR, Publius PR. And the book, looks like The Woking Dead has a website, but it's a little complicated. Maybe we can put up a QR code for all this for him. Please welcome AJ Rice. AJ, welcome.
Dr. Drew, great to be here, brother. I got to say, as a geriatric millennial, I just want to thank you, and I've thanked Adam in the past for allowing me to bat in the late '90s 400 with the ladies. I mean, really, it's a treat to be on here with you. And I had to say that I've been waiting to talk to you for a long time. So I thank you, sir. I was a regular Ted Williams there in the late '90s.
Yeah, 400 is a pretty good batting average, but
Yeah,
you know
not
what?
bad.
But at that same interval, though, what's interesting about that period of history was I was a Anthony Fauci acolyte at the time, and I was very involved in treating AIDS patients, and we were using fear. Do you remember this thing? Hey, AJ, if you have sex with one person, you're having sex with everybody that person ever had sex with, which was, of course,
right.
bullshit. It was bullshit,
Yes.
but we congratulated ourselves for keeping that epidemic sort of under control, even though we later learned that the fear did not change young people's behavior at all. You were out there at the plate batting 400. The hell? I mean, lucky to see you here, AJ.
Well, what about the propaganda back then where we get this made-for-TV movie, right? Where the blonde cheerleader and the captain of the football team, they had sex once and somehow AIDS showed up. It just fell out of the ceiling. I mean, I mean, look, and that was the precursor for now. I mean, now, there's all kinds of diseases escaping Dr. Fauci's underwear drawer. You can't even count them all.
No, you're right. And every time if they start worrying, look, we have a little outbreak in the deep in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and all of a sudden, people in Wisconsin are worried about it. The only reason they would worry about it is if they're screwing around with the virus, if they're increasing the gain of function. Then we should all be ready. We should be having, we should have some antivirals available. But otherwise, we shouldn't even know about it. You shouldn't even be thinking about it. That's not for the public to be even thinking about.
I absolutely agree. And it shows you, though, like you were just talking with Alex, the more voices that are out there, and I work with a lot of them. In fact, I'm the publicist for Jones's books when he puts them out, and I've helped his publisher. So I can see, and I saw you guys were talking about this, the way there are powers that be out there. And if there's anyone at the center of the MAGA cinematic universe, it's me, because I represent Vivek and Donald Trump and Donald Trump's publishing house and RFK Jr. Super PAC, and I can see them coming through the door. And when it comes in particular, Doc, to January 6th related stuff and election integrity stuff and anything COVID related, there are powers out there trying to get us inside the tent to shoot at each other. Because rather than saying this person's a plant and that person's a plant, it's more where they float disinformation, and we've seen them do it with Hunter Biden and many other things, to try to get us to turn on each other and become the Donner Party and eat each other. Because if we stand together, they can't stop us.
Do you know other publicists, or are there other people in your profession that are on that side of floating disinformation to get the Donner Party to eat itself?
I will tell you this. When the OG came down the golden escalator, and I'm broadcasting from Swamp Central here. I'm in DC. I'm deep in the sewers here with the Ninja Turtles. I will tell you, they all flipped. There were a whole number of right of center, PR firms that liked it when the Republican Party would learn how to lose honorably, accept the outcome, go home, have a little, tapioca pudding, a little green tea, and just better luck next time. But obviously, with Donald Trump, these people threw in. They threw in with the Never Trump world, even before Liz Cheney threw in, before January 6th. They all, because in this town, and I've never been one of them, and I was trained by Andrew Breitbart and Laura Ingraham. I'm Ingram's former executive producer, and Monica Crowley's and other people's, to not interact too much with this crew. And they don't. And I will tell you, they're representing, Comey has a book. Every time one of these anti-Trump whistleblowers from inside the Trump White House and now afterwards have come out, most of these people, these PR firms, have thrown in with them. They have thrown in. So it kind of cleared the deck for me, and I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to do it, right? But it's an amazing thing to watch, because what goes on in this town is just sort of this sort of daisy chain of moving resumes around, right? And that's why, when Trump did that phone call with Zelensky, most of those people on that call that we all saw paraded up there for the impeachment, they were all there through multiple different types of administrations. The town is full of that. And I hope if Trump were to win, the fish rots from the head, yes, but you need like a Moab to drop and get 10 layers deep in most of these departments. You can't just decapitate the top of this and the top of that or not fill this position, because these are lifetime bureaucrats. They're sitting there, these dorks, Drew, in their Venetian blinds, little cubicles, waiting for their pensions. And they are not the enemy. They are not friends with the American people. They are not. So look, I'm my own whistleblower. And that's why I get a lot of the guests that have been on your show. I told you before, Naomi Wolf and others, Tulsi Gabbard. I've represent all of them. That's why they come to Publius PR, because we fight for alternative media sources like this show.
Talk about the book, The White Privilege Album.
Well, look, in my day job, I try to be the funniest publicist in America. Look, The Woking Dead and the White Privilege Album are shots at wokeism. And, wokeism, I tried to put together a unified theory of wokeness. It's tough. It's a target-rich environment. It's kind of like the Crayola 64 box, but there are some primary colors. The trans mafia, right? The people sending Tim and Jim into the women's locker room. Obviously, cancel culture and the social justice warriors that pitch revisionist history and the 1619 Project. But with the White Privilege Album, I want to focus on one of the primary colors with an apology to the Beatles. I'm not apologizing to Yoko. I'll apologize to the Beatles. But look, one of the main things that obviously is afoot, and it's going on now because Trump's coalition is becoming more multi-ethnic. And you can see the media trying to explain this through insane ways, which I document in the book, that we are basically they're trying to put us at each other's throats through racial divides. When you hear these terms like toxic masculinity and the patriarchy and, white privilege or check your privilege, what you're actually hearing is the left, and a lot of it comes from the humanities departments. You're hearing them, use code for three things mainly. At the macro level, Doc, it is Western civilization, Greco-Roman, Judeo-Christian civilization, and they don't like it. They want it to go away. They've never liked it. And it's not just about taking down Civil War generals or renaming every school, Michelle Obama Elementary. It's about everything. So when the Queen of England dies, they throw shade at her. She was the queen of white supremacy. They're not just after Robert E. Lee, they're after Grant too. They're after General Washington. They're after Lincoln. And what you saw, especially in the aftermath of the George Floyd situation, is this got turbocharged. But here's the thing. The next thing that they're after that complements this is the middle class. Because wokeism, I explain wokeism as cultural Marxism. So you get out your blend tech, your smoothie device, and you put in there political correctness with a little bit of, cancel culture and obviously a little bit of identity politics. You blend it up and you pretty much have wokeness. But cultural Marxism isn't new. And one of the things that the cultural Marxists, Drew, realized a long time ago was that they weren't going to get an economic Marxist revolution here because we have a vibrant middle class. So the middle class has to go. And the middle class is called, white, or it has white privilege. So look, they have to flood the zone. They have to flood the zone with unchecked immigration, with the Green New Deal, with, inflation on energy and everything else to break us, to break the middle class so that we're all serfs. So we're all just sort of this peasant class waiting for Kamala Harris to feed us in the tampon Tim bread lines, right? And the third thing that they absolutely hate is the nuclear family. It's got to go. Black Lives Matter told us it had to go on their website, right next to their love letter to Hamas. And they don't like it. They don't like it for a lot of reasons, Drew. They don't like breeders in general. Each breeder is a carbon footprint that doesn't offset DiCaprio and John Kerry's plane. But mainly, you have to understand this. For all the talk of joy from Kamala at the DNC, if there's one thing cultural Marxists bring, is anti-joy. They're here to suck all joy from you, whether it's attacking Dave Chappelle on stage or taking the salt shaker off your table like Michael Bloomberg tried to do. They are here to make you miserable. So when I talk about wokeness and I talk about trickle-down wokeness, it's really trickle-down misery. And the goal is to have us all miserable because I think happy people have more children, which they hate. And look, if you don't want to have kids, you have the right to do that. I mean, I'm not here to tell people to have kids. What I am saying is that, with this miserable movement, they want us all alienated, isolated, maybe listening to Taylor Swift, right? And finding different people like yelling white privilege to sort of take their grievances out on.
So as you have framed this phenomenon, what do you imagine the psychology is behind it? People don't just want other people to be miserable just because. What do you imagine that is?
Well, they need customers. They absolutely need customers. And customers come from different grievance groups, right? This guy's the reason I don't have this. My neighbor, has a better car than me. But that is how cultural Marxism kind of works, is that if you're not going to get a bunch of plumbers and bricklayers and longshoremen to burn the White House down, right? If you're not going to get that, and it goes back to a philosopher named Antonio Gramsci, right? And you had all these different books, Upton Sinclair and so on, throughout the 20th century that were trying to sort of expose the capitalist. But if you're not going to get, I guess the goal for Marx and Engels was to hang the capitalists by the rope they manufactured. If you can't get that, you've got to do the long march. And, World War I, you got Margaret Sanger, you got Wilson, and they're getting into Broadway, they're getting into early radio, they get into the silent picture industry, public sector unions, the newspaper business. You fast forward to today, with very few exceptions like Musk, they're in big tech. They're obviously pushing DEI and ESG across the board in a lot of these corporations, although I see, there's been some Waterloo moments. I call them the Waterloos of wokeism. Kid Rock with the AR-15, with the Bud Light, Ricky Gervais at the Golden Globes. And I think, quite frankly, like you were talking about earlier, the fact that Musk became red-pilled, they were not expecting that. That has thrown them off. Now, I don't know what Zuckerberg's doing, but he sent that letter basically saying, I was duped, I'm a dummy, I'm not going to be involved. So they're losing power and they're panicking. And while all this is happening and while they're trying to divide us over different types of privilege, here's what Donald Trump is pushing. He's saying, listen, you can come to the United States if you come here legally. And you can participate in all the things that I've sort of laid out here. There's no color to the nuclear family, the middle class, participate in Western civilization. We can do two things at the same time. We can like sushi and the Magna Carta. We can go out on St. Patrick's Day or Cinco de Mayo and not throw out the Bill of Rights. We can still be the melting pot that we've always been. But we do have one culture here, and it's been very successful. I would not like to see it thrown in the trash can through all these sort of woke, decrees and sort of movements. And there's been a bunch of them, the Me Too movement, and Antifa is the street thugs, that push it. The psychology of it, Drew, I think it really is about power, which is why when you see Kamala Harris underwater with Muslims in Michigan, underwater with Jewish voters in Pennsylvania, Hispanics along the Rio Grande River Valley. I mean, look, you got a bunch of counties on the Texas-Mexican border. They're not exactly filled with Scandinavians, Drew. I mean, they are voting for Trump. They're voting for him in Nevada and Arizona. That scares them, which is so hilarious, Drew. Tell me the psychology of this statement. This is how they explain it. They are claiming, and they started this with Asians trying to get into Harvard, doing better than whites and everybody else, using the minority rules that they set up, and they're getting in and they're doing great. They created this term, Drew. It's a hilarious term. It's called white adjacent. Okay? This is how they're explaining Hispanics for Trump, or Asians, or Indian doctors, Indian medical school, Indian lawyers, that they're all white adjacent. This is I saw the head of NPR was on one of the Sunday shows the other day that said, and this is outrageous, makes no headlines except for like Breitbart and a few other places, that the Hispanics voting for Trump are doing it because they want to be white. So it's not about policies. It's not about the fact that I think most rational people, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Ron Paul people, even some Bernie people, don't want this stuff. They don't want it. You know, they don't want a dude pitching to their daughter in softball. They don't want it. So we have to expose it. And look, I was raised on Rush Limbaugh. I was raised on you and Adam. Andrew Breitbart was a mentor of mine. And I got to tell you, my job, I think, with these books is to use irreverent humor to illustrate truth. And that's what I try to do with everything I write.
So
I noticed.
A few minutes ago, you mentioned Antonio Gramsci, who was an Italian Marxist, right, who thought that cultural hegemony was the way capitalists maintain power, right? Why did you bring him up?
Well, because he's sort of the godfather of cultural Marxism. I mean, for the most part. I mean, he understood, and the people that followed him later understood that you have to capture the institutions. You absolutely have to capture them. You have to kidnap them, capture them, and then you do
cultural institutions.
Yes,
cultural institutions.
And you have to do the long march.
But he had it he was saying that the capitalists were the ones that were using the cultural institutions. You're saying that the Marxists learned that lesson and want to use it themselves, right? Okay.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is media, that's education, that's all over the place. So the question is there, other than irreverent humor and raising awareness, I'm interested in the future. Like what should be done to combat this?
Well, look, and I know this isn't the one that Liz Cheney's looking for, or Adam Kinzinger, but I think there is a true insurrection out there, and it cuts across. It's multi-ethnic. It comes from all different types of cultures. You know, the October 7th situation was in Israel was horrific. But right before that happened, in Michigan, in parts of Maryland, in parts of Massachusetts, the three Abrahamic religions were coming together in a lot of public school meetings to push back on wokeism. It was a uniting factor of people that would never be in the room together. And now, obviously, that's for another day, but obviously, everyone knows what's going on in the Middle East, but it can get done. I mean, parents taking back their schools, PTA meetings, that's the true rebellion, not the one that, Capitol Hill's looking for. And I think you see that happening. I mean, people wearing GoPro cameras going to parent-teacher meetings. I mean, you have to do it. You have to expose what's going on. I'm in the Northern Virginia, D.C. area. Loudoun County was ground zero for this. This is where the government said that these parents were, terrorists because they were showing up mad.
Well, what Alex and I were just talking about was how the redistribution back to the locals, what you're kind of talking about the same thing, which is back to 100%. Family, community, schoolhouse, school boards, local city government. Alexis de Tocqueville pointed that out in 1825 when he was here as a French aristocrat trying to figure out why democracy worked in America. And his fundamental insight was the local practice of democracy is the reason it worked. and we have lost the local practice, and we are being usurped to a hyper-centralized system. Why do we want the federal government involved with anything other than interstate commerce and defense? I mean, wasn't that the more perfect union? Why should they be up our ass in all aspects of our life?
You know, it's funny you bring up de Tocqueville, because he shows up in the midst of a Jacksonian rebirth happening, because even though Jackson was a Democrat Republican, there had been 24 straight years of Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe, and really one party rule, and the elites had gotten fat and happy. So Jackson was trying to take it back to the streets. And Teddy Roosevelt did a little bit of this, and I think Trump and RFK Jr. combined are doing this, where they're trying to get it back to basics, get it back to the street level, you know, in your homes, in your churches, in your, you know, community organizations. So, you know, there could be a rebirth, a bottom-up rebirth. And that scares the hell out of the establishment, because the Republican Party isn't just a bunch of dorks at the Chamber of Commerce anymore. It's, you know, and there's this marriage happening with RFK Jr.'s voters, which is very unique. And it's something that we have not seen in a long time, maybe since the Teddy Roosevelt era. You know, Reagan had some Democrats for sure, but this is a unique marriage that has happened here. And I look, Drew, I'm not a purity test guy. A lot of, you know, right and left people out there, you know, this person's a studio gangster. You know, this person's not real. This person, right? I'm not a purity test guy. You know, if we agree on 75% of things, that's fine, but or even 50, you know, at this point, I mean, we need all the help we can get. So, you know, I'm not big on everyone taking pop shots inside the tent.
Well, AJ, I appreciate you being here. Other than the White Privilege album, you have the other book as well, correct? You want them to check that out and tell them about that?
Yeah, The Woking Dead. Yeah, The Woking Dead was my first book. White Privilege album's kind of the sequel to that, where we crank it up a notch with a little more, you know, outrage, have some fun, hopefully trigger some leftists. And, you know, the holidays are coming. You know, you can probably find a blue-haired, you know, niece or nephew. Maybe you can convert them. I always like to try to use humor to convert people rather than, you know, trying to make some Aristotelian argument, which, you know, Irish guys from Philadelphia are not good at.
I'm trying to find the specifics where we should be sending people for you. Just publiuspr.com and at publiuspr.
If you're trying to, well, whiteprivilegealbum.com for the book. And if you're a conservative or libertarian or independent and you're trying to get out there and you're trying to, you know, at least have chances to be into the media, this new media that Dr. Drew is helping lead, hit us up at publiuspr.com. We work with a lot of people, from Donald Trump Jr. to RFK Jr. and everybody in between.
Very cool.
AJ, Susan, any questions for you?
No,
she's going to want to jump in here. She's leaning into the mic with your
energy here today. I'm just feeling it.
It's the easiest show I ever had.
When I heard you were going to put Jones on in front of me, I'm like, Doc, when I heard you were going to put Jones on in front of me, I'm like, man, I got to go after Elvis? I mean, I mean, come on.
Good.
Let me open for Jones. Don't like, okay. All right. I'll see what I can do.
It worked. Trust me, it worked. We handed the audience over to you and they stayed.
They got bigger.
Oh, they got bigger.
Yeah,
so there you go.
From 31,000 over on one side to 35.
Beautiful.
So you did it.
All right,
well,
AJ.
Look,
do stay in touch.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Finish. Last words. Go ahead.
Sell a book or two.
Well, look, here's what I'll say. One of the reasons they're doing all this, and I'm not trying to, you know, be glib here, is because they are trying to figure out if they can reset us culturally, what can become unburdened from what has been. Don't ever think that's just sort of diarrhea of the mouth. That is something that Ho Chi Minh and the Castro boys and the Great Leap Forward in China, that is the goal. They want to reset us. Jones talked about it. A lot of the guests that come on here talk about it. And we have to not let them. We have to get back to basics, go out there, you know, get a copy of the White Privilege album, have some fun. And look, I don't care who you vote for, just vote with, you know, you can vote with your wallet, vote with your feet, but, you know, get out there and vote. Don't leave it on the shelf. It's the most precious thing that millions of people have died for. So let's go get them in November.
Yeah, that is when people talk about undoing the Constitution, that those are exactly the thoughts I have, that millions of people have died for that Constitution. They swore an oath to it and they died for it. And for us to go, oh, it needs to be changed. No. All right, AJ, thank you so much. We'll see you soon, I hope.
Thank you, brother. It's a pleasure.
You got it. Take care.
And if you have your ballot, and you should just mail it in. I have to go and do mine tonight. But I was just thinking about the people in the hurricane. I hope they all got their ballots and sent them in before they got hit by the hurricane.
California's pretty good at the mail-in stuff. They really are.
Yeah, I know. But if you're in Florida and
I don't
you
know.
didn't vote, there may not be a voting place.
I bet you there'll be ways
Gets
to
hit
do
really
it.
hard.
But
so.
but let's be fair. I mean, the hurricane will be gone tomorrow. You know what I mean? It's still a month away from the voting dates. So let's talk about the upcoming guest, Dr. Robert Malone, in here tomorrow. It's been quite a week. He has a new book out. I'm going to talk to him about that. Then Susan, you wanted to tell people about your show tomorrow afternoon?
Tomorrow we have Calling Out with Susan Pinsky, 2 psychics, and we have some special guests coming in to talk about hurricane tragedies and also spiritually give guidance and love and hope for the future.
Jeff Andrew Gruel coming on the 15th. Scott Atlas on the 6th. Oh, there you are, Susan. You were there for a second. Elizabeth Pipko and Brittany Meyer on the 22nd. Cheryl Atkinson. That should be very interesting. Salty Cracker coming back on November 7th, right after the election. That'll be interesting to have him in here. Susan, let's put Susan on camera. Let her show off her new hair. And there you are. So did you want to say something else about...
No, I'm excited because people like my show, and we're bringing psychic mediums in for everybody to bring love and light to people who have tragedies in their lives.
All right, we'll do that.
That's my job.
And I will be in tomorrow at noontime with Dr. Robert Malone. That is my job. And listen, this situation in Florida did give us an opportunity to remind everyone that they should have this stuff on hand, these nutritious meat sticks, the Wellness Company kits. There's no reason, even though this would have seemed silly 10 years ago, now it should be part of routine healthcare.
Valley also has like superfood bars and, of course, the bone broth, but it's great for packing up and traveling. It's a good product. They have a lot of other products too, and also some great supplements.
We appreciate our other.
We love our sponsors. What can we say?
Look forward to some interesting stuff I'm going to be promoting coming in the future. The longevity products. I'm interested in that right now. Right now, Fatty 15 is my main one. True Niagen was somebody in there with us as well. But there are things you can be. It's sort of a interesting time for that, and you can really do things to age well, age healthy. Creatine is also something people should be thinking of. Weight resistance training is something people should be doing. So it's a lot of stuff we should be paying attention to as we age. That
you can find all the links at drdrew.com/sponsors.
We've been so busy being sick in this country. It's time to get busy being well.
Get healthy.
We'll see you tomorrow at noon with Dr. Robert Malone.
Ta.
Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.